Happy Monday. Happy Monty Monday.
It's another Monty Monday.
You got that right. Another edition.
It's another edition. Right. It's another episode.
Another
in
episode.
Unison at the same time. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Pepsi.
So my bad.
My bad. No, Coke is cool.
Here we are. Get found
and be seen. Hope everyone is well. Hope you had a great weekend. And we are here, ready to rock. Isn't that right, Monty?
Ready to rock and roll.
Ready to rock and roll. And I love the conversation today as well. Maximize your voice. Embrace presence in your presentations.
That's important. Right up your alley.
Right up my alley. Right. It's funny. I've been marinating on this a lot too. I did a speech last week, and some of the stuff we talked about, and it was really cool to just mull over it again, and just always review it. This is always a good thing. This is one of those things where for some people it's basic. For me, it's basic but also foundational. So I always go back to this and get better all the time.
You are the presence king. It's not because you have this certificate because of achievements. It's because of what you do, not what you have done. It is what you have done, but it's more about what you do.
Yes, it's perpetual. It's a continual process. Process. I think that's something I got from the entertainment industry. It's a continual thing because, it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine about singing. I still sing. I still perform. And I said, when I stop performing, I will stop singing on such a wide range as far as different platforms, because it's like you use it or you lose it. That's the way I look at it. Where before it's like, whoa, once you have it, you'll always keep it. That's not for me. It's like I use it or I lose it. I have to get it back. The momentum it takes to get back is a lot at this stage in my life. So, but if I continually work on it and keep it fun and perpetually just keep getting better, strive towards mastery, I'm taking it with me. Why not?
Absolutely.
Why not, Monty? Why not? So
that's in most things in life. There's a skill level. You might, it's like once you learn how to ride a bike, you never forget. It's like, well, once you learn how to sing, you never forget. However, there's a skill level of those things. And to get to a certain skill level, it takes a certain amount of time and effort. And then once again, it's not a certificate. It's like, oh, I achieved that. Now for the rest of forever, I am always going to be at that level. And that's where, you pointed out the other day in our discussion where you said that you might do a backflip if somebody did a certain thing. And then you said, although I may have to reassess how I accomplished this task, because we need to be aware of our strengths and weaknesses as we progress in life, whether that's physical or mental.
That's right. I know when I said backflip, that was I guess that was like a bet we gave one of our friends. Now, it might have to be more of a back roll or front roll.
Not quite like the Giphy that was portrayed in said statement.
No, it was just a fun Giphy.
Absolutely. Right. Not quite the skill level that you are currently maintaining.
Exactly. So Monty, let's get into it. I love this acronym. This is great. This actually, you presenting this idea to me. This was your brainchild and I loved it. And then, of course, I love the name Presence.
Of course, which is, I thought of you, and acronyms are just a great way of putting together some talking material, talking points. So there you go.
Thank you, Monty. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So presence, that first word, prepare. Let's talk about that. Before stepping into a speaking engagement, that could be on camera or on stage. Taking the time to thoroughly prepare your content. And what that means, knowing your subject matter, inside and outside, that you can confidently address any questions or points or discussions that may arise. I love that.
It may arise.
And we guarantee will arise. Whether it's coming
So,
from the audience or from you.
so there's that catch-22 or the caveat. Prepare as well as you can, because you cannot prepare for absolutely everything. But if you have a backup plan for stuff, just kind of like, well, if something falls through here, I'll just talk about this instead, or just a basic plan, but not too rigid, because then you fall into the other side of that where you're so mapped out that something goes a little off track and you can't cope. I don't have a contingency plan to go off track. It's not that you have to have a contingency plan for that. It's that you need a contingency plan to go off track, whatever off track means.
Right. That's true. And everyone thinks differently. So for different people, that's different things. I know for me, like, even if I'm singing or from speaking, I get off track with words. My thing is to bring more of the emotion, more of the passion. I'm a motivator. I love motivating people. So there are different words that I use, or if I can't find the word in the moment, I need to have some tools in my tool belt to be able to adjust. But if I'm too rigid, I come out less soulful. I like to say soulful, less emotion, less conviction when I'm speaking. But if I give myself that freedom to be able to be prepared, but be flexible, man, it's going to be a great presentation.
Absolutely. Prepare.
Absolutely.
Be prepared.
Prepare.
Pardon me. In balance.
Yeah. In balance. It's funny because when I did my speech last week, I had all the time in the world to prepare. And then I didn't. So many other things came up. I was sick. My wife got sick. So she was going to come with me. She didn't come with me. And so the time I was going to use to prepare, which I didn't have to drive, I ended up driving. And the time I had to prepare, I wasn't able to prepare. So I had to find other ways to engage in my preparation, which was cool too. So I guess I could say that with rehearsal. We talk about rehearse.
Well, then maybe that's the segue.
Maybe that's a segue. Segue on. So it's important to rehearse, practice your delivery multiple times. This will help you become more comfortable with the material and will allow you to anticipate any stumbling blocks. Stumbling blocks, aren't they fun? Any stumbling blocks that might come your way, and they can distract you. It will come your way in your presentation, though. Stumbling blocks come.
I like how this ties together and what you were going to say and why it's a segue is that you weren't able to prepare the way that you were going to prepare. So instead, it sounds like maybe I'm assuming too much, but it sounds like you drove and you rehearsed. And rehearse, especially in this sense, isn't necessarily, hey, I've written this thing out. Now I'm gonna read it so that I can memorize it or that I can read it better. It's potentially, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say this thing. Well, let me say it 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways. And what way sounds best to me? I'm just gonna rehearse. That's just one line. But saying it 10 different ways, you've told that story before. And it's really stuck with me. It's really a powerful thing of, well, I could say something and pause certain ways for inflection.
Right.
And I can do it a whole bunch of different ways. Which way sounds best? And not only sounds best, but flows so that I'm not feeling like I'm a tongue-twisting talker. Trying to take time to, okay, never mind. I won't go any further. Hi, Parkita.
Oh, no. Hey, Parkita. What's going on?
I was on the T track there. It was too much.
Parkita says in pageantry, it takes 365 days to well be prepared for the interview, which is 65% of the total score of 100 points. Prepare. Yes, we're talking about prepare. And that's interesting because with what Parkeet is talking about, yeah, it takes a lot of time to prepare. And so the arena that we're in, you know, in the ideal world, Monty, honestly, I want to take, if I'm doing a 45-minute speech, right? I want to prepare as much as possible. I like to go, hey, let me try to prepare a good 40 hours. That's a lot for some people. Like, I know some great speakers who they're like, no, I got time for that. But for me, in the ideal world, I like to. I didn't have that. So I had to be creative. You know, so what I did was, you know, I took all the text in my notes and I put it into an app where I could just listen to it over and over and over. And that was super helpful.
Because you can
And
do
then
that
another
while
thing
you're driving.
you could do it while you're driving, exactly. And even if you're waiting at the stoplight and you're just looking around and just, you know, By the way, I had my son with me too.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to say, hey, okay, Tommy, I got to focus. I didn't want to do that. Also wanted to build some time with him, build some relationship. So while I was listening, you know, they have their AirPods in and stuff like that. But you know, I wanted to be ready to speak to him when he was ready to speak to me. So it was a great balance. But being able to have the AirPod in my ear, one ear, and listen to it over and over, repetitious, was very helpful for me. And now another thing I do too, as far as preparing, this is my secret weapon right here. I learned this with singing. Like sometimes when we sing and perform, we have to learn a song 2 hours ahead before we perform, which is not my favorite thing to do, right? But you got to do it sometimes. So I listen to it in different ways and then I'll write it out. And then I'll practice it, sing it, and then I'll write it out. You know, so I like doing that even with speeches because that helps me to get deeper with my speech because I can get deeper with the melody of how I'm speaking. And then I can get deeper with the emotion, which helps me to get deeper with the conviction of what I'm presenting. And so that's deep right there. But it's very, very, very effective. So those are a couple things I like to do. I kind of went, but
that's okay.
those are
It's all in the prepare rehearse because they mesh together a lot.
right.
Part of preparing is rehearsing.
Right.
And there's different levels of ideal world preparation and reality preparation. And then there's also just that, I'm going to use your word, intentful preparation. Whereas it's not just you gotta memorize it, you gotta say it a few times, that's everybody does that, right? It's like, no, think about if it's a pageant and it's an annual thing, then your prep time is different than the 45-minute speech. You said 40 hours to prepare for a 45-minute presentation. And it's like, well, some people might think that's a lot. It's like, well, yeah, but compared to a year, 365 days is nothing. But it's also, you got to look at that level. And then again, what are you preparing for? Are you on camera? Are you on stage? Is it 50 people? Is it 50,000 people? It's like, so.
Right. Got to prepare for the context. Right.
What's that?
And then you got to prepare for the context.
Right.
The context of what's going on.
Absolutely.
And then you have to, then one important thing too is to get your body involved because, as far as being charismatic and being effective with engaging the crowd. Oh, wait, that's the next one. Let me not get ahead of myself. Hold on now.
We're going to
segue. I'm gonna roll with that. Woo.
Yeah, I think one other thought that I had on the prepare and rehearse side of things and talking about rehearsing and speaking out loud. Perhaps, again, ideally, love to be able to do it for this long, and I'd love to be able to say it out loud because when I talk out loud, I can articulate the stumbling points and say, oh, that's rough to say. Those two words are rough to say. Like we'll get later on, we'll touch base again on words that are difficult to say. So maybe you should switch them around and say them differently. Same words, different order, so that you can articulate. Okay, we won't go too far.
A lot more could be said about that too. But I love
No,
that
we're
one.
going to.
Very important.
So we need to wait, rein it in there. So I just want to say the point of all of that is speaking inside your head.
Right.
So if you're in a room of people and you reciting your presentation out loud is going to be rude to other people or just flat out embarrassing to you, whatever, I do it in my head, and not just remembering the words, but actually saying them in real time inside my head to try and catch those stumbling blocks. It's not as effective, but it's much better than nothing.
It's better than
Sometimes
nothing.
you work with what you got to work with.
Right. And one of the big lessons with that too, Monty, is that we are instruments. You know, of course I have to use that analogy, right? We're instruments, and being instruments, you got to play it. Instruments are played, right? So when it comes to practicing, even if it's inside your head, to execute it is important. If all you got to do is, all you're able to do is practicing inside your head, make sure you execute it, because it's easy to kind of be laid back or lazy with the motion of what we need to project. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very, very important. And so that's where you have to have that mental discipline to be able to execute, if that's all you have. And so what is this is a good question right here. Ooh, Parakita says, what is your advice for someone who has dyslexia? That's a great question.
Well, I think that's also from my limited knowledge of dyslexia. I've known a few people, and it seems to me that there's varying degrees. There's some kind of variance. I don't know how many different types or levels or extremes or what there is there. And different things helped them depending on where they were at and what kind of educational opportunities were available to them. You know, most often there's not much of anything, and they just have to struggle through it and figure it out later on in life. But there's been a couple people I've known that were diagnosed at an early enough time where they applied different strategies for learning. And I couldn't tell you what those are because I wasn't involved with them, but I just know that from casual conversations, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I've struggled with dyslexia and I had to do this type of a thing. And so, yeah, eyesight too. That I think one of them, that the dyslexia was much worse because they couldn't see clearly. When they could wear their glasses, it wasn't as bad because then they could focus easier.
Right.
I don't know.
No, those are good.
I would say find a professional that has knowledge on learning, not just on dyslexia as some kind of disability or something. You need to find someone who just knows, hey, they need a different learning pattern. That's all really they need.
Learning pattern. Absolutely. I had a friend who I performed with for years, actually. And he had a challenge with that. And I knew, I think I had a student actually who had a struggle with that. And I'm no pro at it either. But, you know, what I did learn was it's about how you learn. There's not one way to learn something. Like if you even see things online, sometimes you'll say, this is the one way to do it. This is how you have to do it. But there's so many ways to learn something. There's so many ways to pick something up, a subject, if you have to present, for example. So, and one of the people that I knew with their performance was amazing. And I knew even major artists too, who I think for different reasons had to get lyrics another way. But they were able to do it. So finding out whatever works for you and then making that your strength. Like someone who might have dyslexia may have a bigger strength in another area than I do. And if you could work that strength and make it work for you, that's a powerful thing. You know, and that and this particular individual, music and that really worked, and that worked in his advantage, in so many different ways, which it was like he was a superstar when it came to that. So, but he made it work for him. And then of course you have, you know, it took time with repetition and practice. That's a key thing as well. Rehearsal. So thanks for that question.
Absolutely. That was a double
Oh,
segue. You dropped about
double
engaging
segue.
with our audience. We did a little engaging with the audience there.
Uh-huh.
And that's the E in presence.
The E.
Well, the first
The
E
E.
anyway. There's a couple of them, couple 3's in there. We'll get down there.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. You want to do that one, Monty?
Let's engage. Connect with your
Engage.
audience by making your speech interactive, which is a little easier in a podcast than it is per
Mm-hmm.
se on stage with a large audience, but it can be
Right.
done. So encourage those questions and participation to keep listeners attentive and engaged.
Right. Right. And I love that. Honestly, I think it depends on the individual, but I find that you can use the interactive, speaking interactively as a strength of yours because you don't have to do all the talking. How cool is that? And you playing the role of an interviewer. When I think about podcasts and I think about what I just said as far as you playing the role as an interviewer, I got to think about Oprah Winfrey. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. And she's asking the questions and she's genuinely interested. And that sparks conversation. And that makes the whole discussion better. And one of the cool things psychologically is when you're engaging and people are noticing that you're asking them questions, you authentically really want to know what they're thinking, that pulls them along naturally. That organically pulls them along into your conversation. So I'm like, the work I put into my speech, great. But that part where I engage, let's go. We can make it interactive.
I think
It's
the
such a plus.
interactive gives another level of, you can plan and prepare for so much, but there's some things where it's like, I didn't think about that, or you just presented this cool angle and I want to expand on that.
Right.
So there's opportunities there. Opportunities are not just found. You kind of have to prepare. You have to plan. You have to invest, put some effort into it. And so in your preparations, if you prepare to engage and prepare to maybe go off track a little bit, then you can capitalize on some of these opportunities that are presented by other people, which then just enriches the experience for everyone else.
Right. Agreed. 100%. And with that being said too, as when that happens, that's why it's important to make sure you have a framework, a system in your speech that you could work from. Because if you veer off, you could come back to where you left off at. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yes. The framework that is not a rigid set of instructions, but a guide. So that way you can go off track. But then, like you said, it's easy to come back.
Right.
That's great. Without that framework, the coming back part.
Well, without it, there's no coming back.
Well, or you've come back, but you may have missed something, or it took you a lot longer. There's just a whole bunch of aspects to that where that's really powerful to stop and intentfully think about it for a moment and say, oh, hey, it is easy to go off track.
Right.
It's not easy. So there's part of the preparation. How do I make sure that I can get back on track? I've got this framework.
Right.
Check.
That's right. And I love how you talked about opportunity, because sometimes what happens if you're trying to, you do your presentation, you're trying to engage, but you're getting crickets. That's fun. And sometimes that's an opportunity to lighten up the crowd. Sometimes, you could be the one. I love thinking about parties. Like, you might be the one to start the party. Like, okay, guys, I see it's a little cold in here. Let me get a jacket. Do a little light joke or something like that to bring people into the conversation, to engage them. Kids need that, but adults need that too sometimes. Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that. I saw one recently I really liked that it was the cold crowd. That's what made you the jacket part. What he did
Uh,
is he walked over to the edge of the stage and he sat down. It was a raised stage. So he sat down, his legs were dangling over the edge of the stage. And he didn't put the mic down, but he didn't talk into the mic. But you could still hear him, and he literally just started talking to the person in that was closest to him in the front row. Just started. It's like, this isn't working out for me so well. So what brought you here? And he just, it was kind of awkward for a moment, but then they started talking for a little bit because he just was talking to the one guy. And it wasn't just random. He asked the guy what brought him there, what was his goal for being there, what kind of result was he looking for, and then he started asking other questions, like out to the crowd, and started getting some or something out of it. But it was it broke the tension,
right.
and changed the atmosphere. And also gave him, I think this is the most powerful part is he found out, what are these people looking for? And how can I deliver something to them?
Right. Love that.
So in
that
the
information
part, just took something rather than just going off with his presentation, and where I bet you people would have got up and walked out because nobody was engaged. He just on the fly changed it up. And I would say that's because he genuinely cared.
Yeah.
He wanted to give his information in a format that would be valuable to people. And if that's your mission, and you encounter one of these situations, then it's easier to adapt, because it's like, it's no longer, oh, how do I break through these people? It's, oh, how else can I present my information?
Right. That is very creative. Another thing I thought about too, Monty, is I didn't see the video, but I assume that must have created some curiosity, some form of curiosity for the audience, because he's going to go over this whatever side of the stage he went to, and assuming the right side of the stage, and then he's having a conversation with that one person, and the other person on the other end of the auditorium is looking and saying, what? I mean, even if they could hear him, there's still that curiosity that comes, which kind of breaks you out of your ruts, for lack of better words.
Right. Well, and also with the change up too, even if people weren't looking and didn't see what happened, there was, because like I said, he was talking, so it's like this. It got a nice clear mic, and then he just kind of put the mic down a little ways, so then it would sound more like this, where it's like, oh wait, it's not quite as loud, and so even audibly, people took notice, like, what's going on. Also, the cadence. Here's like me, I'm presenting, I'm strong, I'm putting forward, down to a conversation. Oh, hey, Carl. Hey, what brought you here today? Right. Pattern interrupts. There was a lot of stuff in that one little clip. I watched it several times because it was like, wow, there's just a lot going on there. Some of it intentful, some of it was just because of the situation. This is what happened. But knowing that, dissecting it, and knowing that. So there's the off track. Wonderful to have a framework.
Right.
Oh, so before we move on, then let's look at that there. What advice do you have for someone who has extreme stage fright but wants to do public speaking? What type of prep? That is definitely in Carl's alley. Can you give just a quick what you might do? Maybe first, not a big in-depth how you would go about it, just maybe what you would do.
The what?
And
one thing I think about because honestly, I tell people I have stage fright sometimes. I get nervous going up on stage because the questions come. What if this happens? What if that happens? So you might have a bad dream of something happening.
Can I interrupt you, Carl?
Sure.
I think I'm on the same track. Something you were going to say? I saw a video today in LinkedIn, and it was a weather reporter. It was about, it's actually a couple different people shared this. Is one of the ones that got shared a whole bunch of times. But the weather reporter gets panic attacks on camera, live. So they have a contingency plan, and he says, oh, "Okay, so I'm going to have to go here. As some of you already know, I'm subject to panic attacks. So Mary, if you could go ahead and take over from here," and whatever her name was. And she's like, "Oh yes, Nick, sure, I sure can." Nick was also the author of blah, blah, blah. So they had a contingency plan already in place for the stage fright panic attack situation. So if, again, we're going to have different levels of this stage fright situation. We're going to have just complete freezing, and then we're going to have the ums and the stutterings, and then probably variances in between there. You would know better than I. But there's that thing that I thought was great. The on national, whatever, I don't know how big of a TV station it was, but they had a contingency plan for panic attack.
No, I'm glad you shared that. That's great. That's great. They had a plan, and even with that plan, he was in a position to be able to say that little bit to transition for his co-anchor to speak on his behalf or what have you.
Because of that plan.
Because of that plan.
Right.
I think that's definitely key, to have a plan, and it's a journey, because you have to figure out what works for you. You might, for some people, they might need a coach. For some people, they might need a speech pathologist. It's, it's not just a one word answer for everyone, or one sentence answer for everyone. Absolutely. But for me, what I'd say is, being the goal is to get yourself in a position where you feel comfortable with yourself. Because when I train people, it's like, whether it's dance or singing or speaking, it's getting to a place where you feel comfortable with yourself. Because if you feel comfortable with yourself, you're going to be able to have other people feel comfortable around you, because it all comes from the inside. So being able to, setting yourself up where you could practice on your own, and practice in front of a mirror or in front of a camera, or for some people, maybe not in front of a mirror or a camera starting out. I had one student who she didn't like looking at herself in a camera or in a mirror specifically. So for everyone, it's different. You got to treat, everyone differently. But that's a key thing right there. Being able to get in a position where you practice and you can feel comfortable with yourself, that puts you at ease. And then you're able to keep growing and keep taking those steps forward, those half steps, as you would say, Monty.
As I would say.
And that looks like, as you would so eloquently say. And that looks, even that, all that what I just said, it looks different for everyone. For different people, it looks different. But that's what I'd say, Parakeet. I hope that answers your question. But that's key. The core is feeling comfortable with yourself. Like for me, as a speaker, as a presenter, performer, I'm always looking to feel comfortable with myself. Check this out. So I've been performing for 36 years, right? I finally got comfortable with even singing around 2018. I told a friend that the other day. So singing for 36 years, finally, 2018, I finally got comfortable with my voice when it came to singing. And that helped me, of course, with speaking. So for some, it's a journey. For some people, it takes time. But if you intentionally work towards it, you can get to your destination faster. I wasn't intentional. That's the thing about it. I practiced. I did all the steps I needed to take, but mentally, I just wasn't in a place where I could feel comfortable. So I had to decide to get in a place and use the tools I already had, but super intentionally go after feeling comfortable. That makes sense?
Yeah. And I told a little story, but to answer the question, to actually answer that question, what advice would I have? I'd say, get Carl's book.
Hey.
Read Carl's book, Confidence on Camera.
Confidence on camera. Speak confidently on camera.
And then see where that leads you. Because I thought that was very helpful, even for someone who was not it wasn't on camera. The title may be misleading. The confidence,
right?
It's more than on camera. That was targeting a specific audience in that book, but the content is for anyone, any communicator.
Right. Right. So true. Monty, I need to bring out my course for that too. I need to do the course for that as a follow-up, by the way. But I find even we talk about this stuff more, it's so important for people. I speak to different people. I speak to police officers. I speak to ministers. I speak to people who speak. I speak to therapists, and there's a conversation, feeling comfortable when it comes to presenting. So I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah. We'll come back onto the framework. We'll make this into a segue. One thing that helps me be comfortable?
What's that?
Just a nice little smile.
Smile.
Not a big grin, not a forced, "Hi, how you doing?" But I intentfully try and take the smile out of my face and feel the muscles, and also feel my mentality. It's not a frown necessarily, just it's not a smile, especially when I'm driving. And then I think about, if I ever have a eye contact with another driver or something, I'm going to look like I'm not smiling, and therefore there could be some kind of misconstrued, that jerk, I don't know, just, and then you smile a little bit, and it's like, oh, yes, I have to use muscles to smile, but actually it's really comfortable. It actually feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And then magically, it's really strange. And again, not some big, huge fake smile. Just, I'm going to just move the muscles a little bit. And now I feel better.
Right.
Really? Well, you're being corny, Monty. Okay. I challenge you.
Yeah.
Try it out a few times.
It's interesting because, right. It's interesting because, we're gifted with these abilities, and sometimes we think about abilities, we think about, speaking to 10,000, 50,000 people, or, shout out to my friend Roger Dillingham Jr. I'm going to say, if you're on a $1 billion budget movie, because he's in the movie industry,
nice.
AKA Escalade, shouting you out. Or we think we got to do these extravagant things, but the basic things that we have, specifically speaking about facial expression, is, to me, I get so amazed at it, Monty. And like I mentioned the example with my singing and feeling comfortable, finally, years later, it's a big deal because these things are instruments. My eyebrows, my nose, my smile, my mouth, my cheeks, my ears, even if I wiggle my ears, these are all instruments for you to communicate something of value to people. And it's easy to not feel it's easy to not feel comfortable using them. So we talk about a smile, and we talk about smiling appropriately because, hey, Monty, let's think about my lesson now. No, hey, that ain't gonna work. But if I can do it and find balance with it, it's gonna impact a lot of people. And I was speaking to you off camera, off live before, like even when I speak to vocalists, it's important to smile because it affects their tone. They'll sing flat if they don't smile when it comes to certain parts of a song. Same thing with speaking. If I don't have a smile, things will be flat for me. If my voice is I have a light voice. I call it a light voice. So if I need to speak lower, I need to do extra work to speak in a lower voice, which brings about authority. If I need to speak higher to bring the emotion, sometimes I'll smile, like even I'm doing right now. Or I'll smile on one side. It takes practice. But the point is, smiling is important. Smiling appropriately, not going overboard, but having a good balance with it. It does so much with your presentation.
And what helps me, rather than thinking about, because it's really difficult, you think about, oh, I need to smile. And I've watched other people in presentations, and you can tell all of a sudden that thought goes through their head because they're reading their stuff. And then all of a sudden they're all, and you're like, either they were prompted by somebody, or they thought about it, or something happened, and suddenly they are now all giddy, for no apparent reason. And so rather than that, what I try to think of is just things that make me smile.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've actually, in some of my presentation notes, I'll just write, think about your grandson. In my little speaker notes in the brackets, that's not what I'm saying out loud to people. This is just for me to remember to stay on track or focused or something. And that's, I'll do something about, it's usually my grandson, because I can't help but smile when I think of my grandson. So that's the point. I need to smile. I just think about my grandson. I'm smiling. Now I talk about anything and I'm smiling.
Yeah. I love it. And I find too, like, I love that analogy. Those are great examples. And I find too, when I'm speaking, I love getting into things. I get so into something, like I love getting into video games and the simple things of life, things that kids get into. But when I get into my speech and I'm doing it live, the energy level's raised up a lot of times too, when I get into my zone. So I'll laugh at something that I said that I didn't think it was funny. Then when I'm speaking it, that's kind of silly, and I'll laugh about it. But the cool thing is it pulls people into the conversation. It helps me to share with people my joy or my humor with myself, which is kind of weird. It's kind of like talking to yourself, and the audience is there. Sometimes when I'm amongst students, if they don't have questions to break the ice, I'll ask myself a question. Okay, Carl, what do you how do you do this? And they're like, dude, really, you speak to yourself? And it's funny. So it loosens things up. It loosens the tension up, So I find that finding humor in what you say, finding humor in your material, there's nothing wrong with that. Have fun with it. Even if you come across goofy, it's okay. That's part of your personality, perhaps. Appropriately, yes. Don't do it. I'm doing it on purpose now.
Being goofy is good. Although if you're reciting the obituary, or not the obituary, what's when you with the speech at the funeral, maybe you want to tone that down a little bit, right? Unless you're really happy they're gone. I suppose maybe I couldn't contain myself. I don't know, but again, as we were saying, it's smile appropriately. So it's one aspect of appropriate is not some big grin, not a fake smile,
right?
But also it's more like you said. It encompasses more than a smile. Smile appropriately. So maybe appropriately means no smile.
Right.
Maybe there's a point being made, and it's a serious point.
Right.
Unless you're a stand-up comedian, you're probably going to want to balance that out some.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and you want to read the room at the end of the day. Like, there's some times where I'm in a room and I'm speaking and the conversation's serious. I might smile to let people know it's going to be okay. But my smile to let people know it's going to be okay is not this. It's
right. Well, it's also not the same as I'm watching my 2-year-old grandson dance, which is just basically jogging in place, but it's still cute as all get go, and I can't help but smile, and the smile is big and happy, So it's like, again, appropriately, we're looking at. So in that circumstance where you're trying to exude confidence and security, a big happy giddy smile is not going to do that so much. In fact, that's going to seem forced and like you're covering up something. It'll be okay. Honest.
Right.
Trust
me. Yeah, that's like Batman, right? Batman and the Joker right now. But it's good. But and we're going crazy with it, which is fun. We're having fun with it. But you want to be able to read. This is good, but it's good to talk about this, because sometimes people don't talk about this, and then if we don't talk about it, you don't know what to do. So you have tools in which you'll know what to do. You're the instrument. You'll have to figure out how to tune your instrument or tune yourself as the instrument.
Tune it in.
Tune it in.
Well, let's carry forward.
Enunciate.
I did the last couple of one. I'll let you do this one.
Enunciate. All right. So enunciate. I love that one. Pay attention to your pronunciation and articulation. That is important. You want to be mindful to speak clearly so that all of your audience members can understand you. Now, this one, I have fun with this one because I love speaking. I love mumbling and speaking with slurs. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? I'll do it intentionally, but I try my best to enunciate. I'm bad with this, Monty.
When you're trying to articulate and enunciate, a wet palate can help you accomplish that, so that you do not stumble across words that are hard to articulate.
Right. Very true. That's very true. Drink, yeah, and on top of that, anyway, as you present, you want to drink a lot of water anyway.
People don't realize how much moisture you expend.
Right.
You know, even and then if you're nervous and you're sweating like a horse, then there's all that other water expenditure. But even without that, just from your speaking, from your breath, there's a lot of moisture that comes out of your body. And since you're the one presenting, and especially if it's solo, that's why, like you said, when there's someone else, that's great because you're not doing all the talking. But when you are doing all the talking, boy, you can use up a lot of moisture quickly. And then it becomes more difficult to articulate. And then you find that you can be stumbling or mumbling or having to repeat yourself, or maybe not repeat, but let me start over. And then you start to lose confidence, and then you start to have other side effects. So that's interesting. Stay hydrated. It's not only healthy, but it can help you speak.
Stay hydrated and breathe. That's going to help your enunciation. And you want to be able to pronounce and articulate well. And I love that too, Monty, because I when I think about water and I think about breathing, when it comes to enunciation, it helps me it's a good checkpoint for me mentally, because there are times where I might be in a zone, or I might be nervous, or I might lose my place. But if I breathe, or if I get some water, I'm able to get back on track, and I'm able to enunciate and speak clearly. So works in different ways, multiple ways.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed.
I think that's a good segue, actually, because by drinking and staying hydrated and breathing, you can neutralize your nerves, which is interesting about the enunciation, because this is what I was referring to earlier that we're going to come to, is when some words are next to each other, they're difficult to enunciate. So we were looking at nervousness neutralization. It's also wordy and got so many syllables, but then we're trying to shorten that down and nervousness. It's like, that just doesn't work. Neutralize your nerves. Just throws off.
Bam.
So there it is. It's like, oh, well, by rehearsing, by preparing and rehearsing, I could potentially enunciate things in a way that I find out, oh, I could stumble on that. So I can neutralize this nervous situation by switching those around. I couldn't quite tie it all. And there I'll be smiling appropriately because I'll be happy about it, and I'll be able to engage with my audience better. There, I tied it all together.
You tied it all together. This is.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to move on to the next one. Too soon. You have something else to say. Go on.
Oh no, the point is, you definitely want to neutralizing your nerves. That's a key thing you want to do, and that's one of the core things for people who want to be confident when they're speaking. They want to be confident when they present. So one of the key things is getting to know what your nerves are. What are the things that make you nervous, and how can you neutralize them? So yeah, taking deep breaths, that's a good checkpoint to give yourself a break and to reset your mind and reset your body, reset your whole presence. So that's it.
That was perfect. That went from enunciate to neutralize your nerves and into the sea of confidence. The
confidence
sea of confidence.
And that wasn't on purpose.
Wordplay there. That's a pretty neat wordplay. Totally unintended. Oh, wait, no. I intend my puns.
Here you go. Thanks, P.R.E.S.E.N.C.E. And yeah, I will let you know when that course comes out, P.R.E.S.E.N.C.E, for sure. Stay tuned.
Ooh, now you got extra motivation.
Hey, that's
you got
right.
Someone asking.
Plus, you're gonna hold me accountable too.
Now I'm gonna hold you accountable because you got somebody asking. Carl, don't forget.
Don't forget.
Don't forget. You gotta tell P.R.E.S.E.N.C.E when you're ready.
Don't forget.
All right.
Don't forget. This is an interesting one, though. Your confidence, projecting your confidence and your voice and your body language. Believing your message and your audience will too. That's a big deal because it takes intent to do that. And that's one of those exercises where, we talked about facial expression earlier with the smiles. Some of these things you practice, it won't feel real. It's going to feel fake because you're not used to doing it. You're not used to rehearsing it. It's like lifting a kettlebell. You go to the gym, you look at that kettlebell. Oh, all right, I'm going to lift weights. Here we go. You look at it, you touch it, you bend down, you touch it, you start lifting it up. It comes off the ground a couple inches. You put it back down and you say, this doesn't feel right. This is fake. I'm going home. It makes no sense, right? It's the same thing when it comes to projecting your confidence. What does it look like? You want to practice it. It's not going to feel comfortable for a lot of people at first, but you have to practice it. That helps you to get better. I love it when Tony Robbins says, I think he says, motion creates emotion. But without that motion, you won't feel the emotion. You have to step in that direction to be able to practice, and projecting your confidence.
There's a couple of different variations of that situation. But I just want to play the motion and emotion part. Oh, it was momentum, motivation, and motivation and action.
Right.
Okay. Well,
right.
You can have action creates motivation. Well, you can have motivation, but if you take no action, the motivation will dwindle or die off, or however you want to describe it. And the same goes with there. Is that you can have what's the words I want? I'm stuck on motivation now. What were the words you used?
Emotion, motion, emotion.
You can have the emotion first, but if you don't have some motion, then the motion will fade. Or you can start with the motion and build emotion from it. So I don't know. There's just that statement of you can't have motion, you can't have emotion without motion. And it's like, well, no, there are things that'll get you emotional. But if you don't start some motion, those die off, and then they don't make you emotional anymore.
Easily. And it's funny how it could happen just like that. 2 seconds it can happen.
Oh yeah.
So that's why when you get that,
get emotional, and then you can lose it.
That's right. So bam. Oh, I gotta at some point I gotta elaborate on that. The projecting the confidence. Woo, that's a blog right there. Woo.
Absolutely.
That's a video and a blog. Loving that. So let's get to that last one, Monty.
Let's wrap it up.
Contact. Let's wrap it up. Put a bow on it. Eye contact. It's important to maintain your eye contact with your audience. This will help you establish trust and credibility while also ensuring that your listeners are engaged and attentive. And besides that, if you're not looking, you can't tell if they're engaged or not.
Although I'd like to add into that too, just as with smiling, have eye contact appropriately. Because, if you're talking to an individual person and you just, everything you do is you're just right there. I'm I'm not looking away. In fact, you're going to blink first. There's a little bit of thoughtfulness when I'm speaking anyway. I get a little creeped out when the person just stares into my eyes. I just get this weird kind of like, I don't know what it is that creeps me out about it. But when it's just a dead stare and they're talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, it's like, I don't know. Maybe some people can have a complete thought process with just staring at one spot. But me, I'm looking all over the place. I go to eye contact, but sometimes when it's like, there was this time, and then it's intentfully, I'm thinking about this time. So I need to stop the eye contact so I can think about the time. So that way I can formulate it and bring it back to the eye contact.
Right. I think it's a balance, Monty. Because I remember like in the 90s and the early 2000s, it's like the power stare. You got to have a power stare, and that got a little too extreme. But I personally love looking off, and because that's what I naturally do. So if I naturally do that in a way that's appropriate, right, just like the smile, it's going to come across more authentic anyway to my audience.
How do you talk to your friends? I suppose. Exactly. It's casual conversation. And again, balance. You don't want to be too casual in a professional setting.
Right.
Although even in a professional setting, do you really want to appear stiff?
True. Yeah, just don't go there with your pajamas on, casual. But
that balance there. There's probably a happy medium somewhere. Maybe at least a jacket.
Right.
Nice.
At least the jacket.
Coat over your pajamas or something. I don't know.
At least. This is good stuff, Monty. I love it. So, Monty, how can we keep this simple?
Keeping it simple. There's so many words there. My goodness. I think being somewhat relaxed, as with everything, there's a balance involved, but being somewhat relaxed so that you're not stressing over stuff, so that you can go through the presence acronym and do some preparation and do some rehearsing and plan to engage in the way that will be appropriate, so that you'll be smiling appropriate at this point. Right. And then by rehearsing, you're helping with your enunciation. And by doing all these things ahead of time and planning, you can neutralize your nerves. That gives you confidence. And then all you have to do is get that balance. What's my right eye contact for me and my audience? Done.
Monty, that was good.
You're just, be yourself. There's the keep it simple.
Be yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes, let me not enunciate. Be yourself. Be yourself.
Don't be somebody else.
That's right.
I saw my wife has a handbag that says, always be yourself. Unless you can be a frog, then be a frog.
Well,
she loves frogs, but just thought it was okay. Always be yourself.
I love it.
Unless you can be that.
And frog. Monty, that's right. Unless you can be that frog. So Monty, if people are trying to figure out how to do this and speak more confidently, and they have to understand that they need to figure out who they're gonna need to speak to. They need an ideal client. Where can they go? Where can they find you when it comes to finding their ideal client, which is important?
Well, part of that preparation, when you want to identify and develop your target audience so that you can pinpoint the right things to say in the right way so they receive your message clearly, you can visit theidealclientmap.com.
Solid. That was solid, man. That was solid.
It's what I do.
It's what I do.
You, however, obviously do something completely different. So therefore, since you do something different than me, where would one go if they were looking for presence development? They want to develop their presence so they can become more confident, so that they can stand out from the crowd and become unforgettable.
Unforgettable, memorable, evoke emotion, engage, be charismatic or not, but still engage the audience. And practice this acronym that we talked about as far as presence. You can check out, I'm trying to be like you, Monty. You can check out carlalene.com, where you find all things Carl, and we will be doing some fun events when it comes to presenting and learning how to speak more confidently on camera and on stage. Check me out, carlalene.com, and we'll speak to you soon.
Awesome.
How's that, Monty?
That was great.
I dig it. I dig it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching another edition of Get Found
And be seen.
And Be Seen. We will talk to you later. I got to watch my peace sign because these balloons. I'll do it anyway.
Later. Party time.
Party time.